The Total Screen proudly presents their official podcast, OnScreen, with your hosts, Tyson Gifford and William Rohrig. Hello, everybody, and welcome to OnScreen, the official podcast of the Total Screen. My name is Tyson.
My name is Will.
And today we got some trailers to go over, some stuff about streaming services to talk about. We also have some stuff to look forward to on the horizon that's coming up in the next week or so. And then, in full spoilers, we will be discussing Barbarian, the movie that came out last year. It's a horror movie, and we're going to be talking about it in our full spoiler segment. But let's get started with On the Horizon. On the Horizon is where we talk about stuff that's coming up in the next week or so. We're going to start things off with Ahsoka, which is finally coming out on Wednesday, August 23rd on Disney+.
After a long time.
Yes. We've been hearing about this for a while. They announced things too early, I think.
Right.
But now it's finally coming out, and we can finally talk about it soon. That'll be fun. And I believe we're going to talk about that on the podcast, unless we just both really hate it and don't want to talk about it.
Yeah. We'll have to see about that.
Then on Thursday, August 24th, Blasphemous 2 is coming out for the PlayStation 5, the Xbox Series X, PC, and Nintendo Switch. I know this is really popular among the Metroidvania fan base. It's going to be a big game for them.
Oh yeah, I haven't played the first one, but yeah.
Here's one for you as a big fan of From Software.
I like how you say this. This has no... Okay, go ahead.
So, Armored Core 6, Fires of the Rubicon. I say it because it's the next game from Software.
Yes.
So, it's Armored Core, which is an existing franchise, but I think they probably put in Poison Swamps in this one.
Maybe. But no, I say that because, I have never played an Armored Core game before. So, I'm interested.
Now.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I'm interested in checking it out. I do want to say, though, that
You've never seen so many robots rolling around on the ground.
Despite your memes, this is not a Souls game. The developers have emphatically come out and said that this is not being designed in the style of Souls games. This is an Armored Core game. This is a sequel to previous Armored Core games. It's going to play like an Armored Core game. It's not going to suddenly play like Dark Souls.
I'll bet you a shiny nickel there's a swamp in this thing.
Yeah. I bet that'd be so funny if there was.
But that is coming out on Friday, August 25th to PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X, and PC.
Yes.
Mechborn.
That's
the new genre.
That's the new genre. Yeah, that's what people are going to start saying.
Speaking of video games, Gran Turismo is coming out to theaters on Friday, August 25th.
Because it's not a video game. Surprise!
Yeah, this is based on the true story about the Gran Turismo player that became a race car driver through some promotion that Sony was tied to.
Yeah.
Looking for new race car drivers. But yeah, so they made a story about that. So it's kind of connected to the video game, kind of about the video game, but not. But it's still published for Sony, and
it's really the only way you could make a quote unquote Gran Turismo movie, because if you made a straight movie about racing, how is that Gran Turismo? It's racing.
In that sense, it's kind of similar to the Tetris movie, for example. They're different in the sense Tetris is about the making of Tetris, but they're similar in the way that they're not really adaptations of the games.
Well, what an actual Tetris movie entail, it's falling blocks.
There was a parody trailer that came out maybe 10 years ago. That was about a Tetris movie that was pretty hilarious.
I don't think I saw that, but I saw the joke film poster that Penny Arcade made, where it was Tetris blocks falling to earth and crushing buildings and people running in horror.
No, this trailer it was almost kind of like Tron, where it was I think people were riding the Tetris box like they were vehicles. It was weird. It was funny.
That's hilarious.
But I mean, we have a huge hit movie in theaters right now based on Barbie, so who knows? There's things you can do.
Yeah, there are things you can do. I mean, but Barbie's also a character that looks like a person you could apply a personality to.
But that's not really what the movie is either, so.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just interesting. We have this stage right now where the joke was always that video game adaptations were so bad. Of course, now we actually have some good ones out there and stuff. I mean, just this year we got the Super Mario Brothers movie, and we also got The Last of Us on HBO. So we've been able to get like good adaptations that fit and make sense. But we're also entering this weird phase where we're getting we got the Tetris movie on Apple TV Plus, and Gran Turismo we're getting this year. So we're getting these weird kind of ones that tie in but aren't necessarily adaptations. It's just an interesting time for the video game adaptation, the humble video game adaptation. And then lastly, we have Retribution coming out on Friday, August 25th in theaters. And this is the new Liam Neeson old guy action movie.
Yeah. It's Liam Neeson.
He's all, I have a special set of skills, and they're all called Retribution.
Yes. I don't know too much about this movie, to be honest.
I saw a trailer. It has something to do with he's driving a car with his kids in the back seat, and he gets a phone
Oh,
call.
that's right. That's the one where, like, he gets the phone call, and he has to keep driving, and he can't stop, or they're gonna bomb his car. Or, like, they got, like, other people's cars, like,
it's
rigged
speed
too.
taken.
Yeah, speed taken, or something, because, like, there's a scene where he's like, looking at like somebody else's car or something. He's on the phone with like the guy, and there was the implication he was going to like explode the car next to him or some shit. I was like, oh man, yeah.
You know, as Liam Neeson keeps getting older, how do you keep making old guy action movies with him? Well, you just have him in the car the whole time.
Yeah, exactly. Not much physical stress there.
Yeah, but that is it for our On the Horizon segment, and now we're moving on to On Beat. On Beat is our news segment. We've got a few trailers to go over, and then we also have some stuff to talk about in regards to streaming services based on a news story that came out about Disney+. It's a pretty vague news story, but it's going to kick off a bigger discussion. Let's start with the trailers, though. Our first trailer up is Landscape with Invisible Hand, which, nice title.
I
appreciate a weird title.
Yes. Based on that title, I had no idea what to expect, and boy, was I not disappointed. This is a very weird movie.
It looks like something you'd see in like maybe an episode of Rick and Morty or something.
Yeah, exactly. Like a Rick and Morty
concept episode, yeah.
It's like this bizarre looking alien, like not humanoid looking at all. Just like the weirdest alien design in the world comes to Earth and has to be the husband to like this woman and be the father to her kids or something. So it can like learn about Earth and I guess its species. Some sort of deal with this alien species, and it's really weird.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like a fun, weird movie. I appreciate fun, weird movies, and
yes,
especially if they have fun, weird titles, so.
Yeah, exactly.
Next up, we got a trailer for a new South Park game, which oddly enough is moving away from, they had the perfect art style for their old games because it looked exactly like the show.
Yes.
And they're moving away from that because they're moving towards more like 3D gameplay. And in order to do that, obviously, you can't have that art style that they were using for the earlier games. But this game is also, it's not an RPG. It's like it's like a raid game.
Yeah. It's like a third-person shooter-style game where you're, like, throwing snowballs at the other players, apparently.
Which kind of reminds me of, do you remember that South Park first-person shooter that was made by Iguana on, like, the
for the
N64?
Yes, it reminds me of that.
Where every weapon had, like, an alternate form, and, like, your base weapon, instead of, like, a punch or something, was throwing a snowball, and your alternate version of that was that you peed on it?
Yeah.
As a yellow snowball.
Yellow snowball, yeah.
That's kind of what this reminds me of.
Yes, it does. And it looks awful. The graphics look terrible.
Because you can't do the art style that looks like the show when you're making the gameplay in that style. But
I think it worked well enough on the N64, but man, it looks rough here.
I'm probably going to have to watch a stream of it of some kind because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of like good South Park writing in it that I'm going to want to like partake in, but I'm just not interested in the game at all.
No, same.
So yeah, this is going to be like something to watch somebody stream, I guess. Just to get the jokes from, I guess. else. And then the last trailer we got was for the new Scott Pilgrim animated series on Netflix. Before we had like a little teaser that didn't actually, I don't think it showed anything. I think it showed maybe like one shot of just the kind of art style, which is basically what the comic book looks like. And then
it looks like an animated
version
of the comic book.
Yeah, and then all we got besides that on the teaser trailer was just the fact that it's like basically the whole cast of the original movie returning, and Edgar Wright is, I guess, producing. I don't know if that's just a producer credit because he did the movie, and they're just giving him a credit, or if he actually has anything to do with this. But the fact that the entire original cast is back makes me think, well, maybe they did actually consult him and not just like pay him or something. But yeah, that's coming. It looks like the original comic book art style, but it's got the entire cast from the movie, which is an absolute classic. And I think it looks pretty good. It's weird because it doesn't look as good as the movie. It doesn't look as stylish, even though it's animated and it should be even more stylish. Like somehow the movie just looks more stylish.
I don't know. I think it looks stylish enough.
I think it looks good. I just don't think it looks as good as the movie. The movie was phenomenal, you know?
Right. Yeah, the movie was phenomenal. Yeah, absolutely. I don't know. This looks fantastic to me. I don't know.
Yeah, it looks like it'll be fun.
Yeah.
And because it's not limited to like a 2-hour runtime, since it's like a series, it means that they can really put more time into the story and stuff. So
and it's interesting. It's with it like being produced by Edgar Wright, and with it, the voice cast being entirely like the cast of the film. But like obviously the art style and the fact that it's a series, it's going to be able to go more into the depth of the comic series means like this is like some weird hybrid between the comic books and the film.
Yeah.
Which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's probably the most interesting aspect about this as a project. But yeah, I'm going to watch it because I love the movie. You know, I didn't really care too much about the comic. I didn't really give it a shot or anything. I'm not going to say like I read it and didn't like it. I just never gave it a shot, you know, but the movie I loved. So I'm going to definitely watch it for that, you know, for that connection. I think if it was just a Scott Pilgrim series, I might not have watched it. But the fact that it has the cast of the movie is what really is drawing me personally in.
Right. Oh, yeah, that's fair. Have you ever played, like, the game that was, like, on the, I guess it's on the Switch now.
God, I think I might own it, but I don't think I've ever played it. It's one of those ones that I bought on sale and then it just disappeared into my queue somewhere.
Have you ever played River City Ransom?
Yeah, I've heard it's like that. It's like a River City Ransom.
Yes, it's very much like River City Ransom. That's definitely, like, where it takes its inspiration from, for sure. It's a fun game.
I've heard that. I've heard good things about it. But that's it for our trailers. The last thing we have is that Disney Plus has announced that in 2024, so not right away, but in 2024, they are going to do basically what Netflix did, which was a huge controversial move where they cut down on password sharing. What's interesting here is that not only are they doing that, but they just recently enacted where, like, personally, I haven't paid for it yet, but it's coming up on my next payment on it, which is where I canceled it, actually, is that they just did a big price hike. I don't think it's hit everybody yet. I think it's hit some of the month-to-month people, but it hasn't hit the annual subscribers yet. But they did a huge price hike this year, and now they're saying next year they're cutting down on the password sharing the same way Netflix did. So to clarify, I want to talk about the Netflix thing first. When Netflix did it, this isn't news. This has already happened.
Yeah,
but everybody was like, "Oh, this is it. Netflix is going out of business." Also, and my position was, no, Netflix is the market leader. They are by far the market leader when it comes to streaming. And I don't just mean that in like the number of subscribers, which is like the base way to look at it, but like when it comes to like mind share of like a streaming service, Netflix is way out top. When it comes to like innovation from a streaming service, Netflix is way out top. Like in basically every objective metric of how you would measure the success and influence of a streaming service, Netflix is way ahead of everybody else by like a significant margin, and they're ahead in subscriber base as well. So when people were like, oh, Netflix is going to lose all their subscribers, and then even some articles came out, I think reflecting the subscription rates in Spain and a few other countries, where they were like misrepresenting the numbers because they were saying, oh, Netflix lost like half of their subscribers. But what they didn't say was that those half were people that were like leeching off of other people's accounts. So these are not paid subscriptions that they lost. These are people that were getting it for free who are no longer members. My prediction with what was going to happen with Netflix was that there's going to be a dip. There's going to be an actual paid subscription dip where people go like, oh, I'm angry about this, I'm going to unsubscribe. And you're going to see a little bit of a dip for it. And then within half a year, it's going to start coming back. And then it's going to be even more subscribers than they had before at a larger growth rate than they were currently having, because there's so many people that now do not have accounts at all that were leeching before that now are going to have to open up paid accounts. So I'm like, the number of paid accounts they have is going to go way up, that was my prediction, that there would be an initial drop and then that would happen. It turns out that the initial drop didn't even reflect what the new subscriber add-ons added to it. There were so many new subscriptions or new paid subscriptions that activated that it completely outweighed the dip that I thought was originally going to happen from the very beginning. So this wasn't a case of there was a dip and then it picked back up. It's the dip wasn't even big enough to hurt them with the amount of new subscribers they had.
Right.
From people that were like, well, what am I going to do? Not have Netflix? And so Netflix did really well there. And I think a lot of people were they just said, I don't like this, so this is going to hurt Netflix. And I called bullshit on that. I'm like, Netflix is, because they are the streaming service, they are the essential streamer, that it wasn't going to hurt them. Now Disney Plus is doing it. I don't think that's the same case. I don't think they're in anywhere close to the position that Netflix was in when they did this.
No,
they are not an essential streamer.
Because Netflix, they were first to the market. And at first they relied mostly on third-party content to support their service, but they did the smart thing and they heavily invested in original content to the point where now a majority of our stuff is original content. They got a lot of stuff on there and they're constantly putting it out every month. I don't see that with Disney Plus. Disney Plus is definitely leaning harder into their legacy library than new content.
Mm-hmm. I think the big thing is that Disney Plus, the big advantage that Disney Plus has over every other streamer, the one area they have a big advantage, is they are the family platform.
Yes.
But the thing is cutting down on subscriptions, password sharing subscriptions, doesn't really do anything there. Because it's not little 12-year-old Timmy who lives in our house now has to get he's going to be able to still be on the account, because that's not how the password sharing cut down works. It's you get the account for the family and in that household, So you're not going to get extra money from little Timmy and little Susie. You know what I mean? That has no advantage to them. Where you're going to hit people is you're going to hit people that are sharing their password, that are into say the Marvel stuff and the Star Wars stuff. Those are the people you're going to hit. The problem is that all you have for those people are Marvel and Star Wars, and they're putting out one episode a week of one show at a time with sometimes months between them with nothing. So they don't have enough content to be doing this. I think this is the case where people will legitimately cancel their subscription, and not in that, oh, I'm fed up, I'll cancel it, and then a month later they resubscribe and create their own account. These are people that are going to cancel it and then that's it. They won't come back. Or if they do come back, they might come back, once the next Marvel show has completely aired, they might resubscribe, watch through that and cancel again. But that's not exactly a strong case for having, subscriber numbers for Disney Plus. That's not they're not in the position that Netflix was.
Right.
I mean, I think we can agree, right, that there are three essential streamers right now, in my opinion. Really only two, actually, I'd say, but I kind of maybe ran that out to three, which is Netflix, of course, they are the essential streamer. Then Amazon, but Amazon gets it not because of their streaming content, but because of their shipping. And the streaming stuff is just a value add. But they're an essential service, I should say. And the last one is Max, and that's mostly because of HBO and mostly because of the prestige that lends. They're the prestige service, because HBO is the prestige channel. So it's that's the advantage they have. After that, then you're looking at maybe Hulu, which kind of fluctuates in and out, just mostly because of all the live TV connections they have. They still have a lot of stuff. If it airs on FX, well, then it's going to be on Hulu as well. Or if it's on ABC or Fox, it'll be on Hulu as well. It's that second day cable replacement aspect that Hulu benefits from, which puts them on the edge. Disney Plus is way down as far as being an essential service. They're way down at fifth or sixth. They don't have the sway to be doing this. I don't think anybody has the sway to be doing this besides Netflix. I think they're the only ones that can do this.
Oh yeah, no, I agree with you. Netflix is the big dog in the field, And when you're the leader of the pack, you can get away with doing moves like that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think like the also-rans can get away with it. The thing is, it emboldens them to try.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, like, imagine it like if, say, fast food chains, let's say McDonald's said, you know what, we're not going to do free refills on drinks anymore.
Yeah.
McDonald's might be the only fast food place that could get away with doing it.
Oh,
you know,
100%.
because they're already the biggest fast food chain. But like, let's say Wendy's says, you know what, we're going to follow McDonald's lead. That would probably be detrimental for them.
Yeah, because people just go McDonald's. It's the same thing. Disney Plus raises their prices to match Netflix. People are like, okay, well, I'm just going to cancel Disney. I'm going to stick with Netflix.
Yeah, because Disney Plus doesn't put out the wealth of content that Netflix puts out.
Right,
like,
yeah,
Netflix
exactly.
Netflix puts out like in a month what Disney Plus will put out in like 2 years.
It's hilarious because like Disney Plus was initially sold as like it's this great value because we're only selling it what $7 a month initially.
Oh, I think it was less. I think it was like I think it was $6 a month, and then you could also pay annually for like I think $60 a year. So it's basically like getting 2 months free. $60 a year is like that's just a nothing ass.
Oh
it's
yeah,
like,
actually,
sure,
it was $6.99 a month.
That's like one video game for a year.
Yeah, it launched in 2019, November 12th at $6.99 per month.
Yeah.
So they were like, that was the value proposition. The value proposition was the entire Disney back catalog plus new shows for $7 a month. And now that's not the value proposition anymore.
I think it's on like $12 now.
And I remember, like, even then, I remember I bought that first year. And we discussed this before.
About being disappointed with
being
what
completely
you paid.
disappointed. Yes, because that first year they did not release any new Marvel shows that they had announced. They did not release any of the Star Wars shows.
No, they did. They did Mandalorian. That was the
Did
one.
Mandalorian come out in 2019? Okay,
That came out in the first year. That was the only one.
Yeah,
that was
so
the
they
only
released.
new show they had.
That's it. Yeah, they released the Mandalorian, and I was like, wow! I got so hyped up for this. I spent a year on it, and like. Mandalorian aside, nothing of what I paid for ended up on the service in that entire year. That was money down the drain, even at that cheap price.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, you could have waited till The Mandalorian was done, subscribed for like $7 and gotten everything out of it just by watching something that you could have sat down and watched in one sitting.
Because I foolishly believed there was going to be much more content within that first year than there was. It was crazy. And so that's the state of things. And I don't think they've really improved much in that matter. Like, they are releasing shows every year, but it's only like a couple shows per year.
Yeah, like, well, I mean, especially if you're an adult that's more interested in the Star Wars and Disney stuff and not really interested in, like, High School Musical, the series, you know? It's a completely different demographic. And somebody like you or I, we're not interested in that at all. There's no crossover. And then it's like, okay, sure, we'll watch the Marvel series, but that doesn't even necessarily mean we're going to watch the Star Wars series. Then you have like the declining quality of the Disney Plus Marvel shows and Star Wars shows. They've both been in quality decline for a while now. It's kind of like, okay, why am I paying for this? I get why I was paying for it for like season 1 of The Mandalorian or like for WandaVision and Loki, but why am I paying for this for Secret Invasion and the Book of Boba Fett?
Right.
Like,
yeah, exactly. It's like the stuff has to be better quality too.
Yeah.
You know, it can't be just like we put out a new Marvel show. It's like, okay, but it has to be good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's you've had that, and then you also have like Marvel saying, you know what, we're actually going to cut down on the number of series we're doing. It was a mistake to push out too many. So what are you going to replace that with? Are you just going to have less stuff coming out now as you're raising the price and cracking down on password sharing at the same time? You're not even going to offer bad Marvel stuff now, just nothing? Like, what are you doing now? It's just kind of crazy to think about, like, how they're handling this service with as poorly as they're delivering, that they're just trying to match Netflix as if they're, like, in the same league or something. It's, like, nowhere close to the amount of content Netflix is putting out. Just not even a blip on the radar when it comes to that. So, the thing is, I argued with some people about when Netflix was doing this, and they basically thought that I was like defending Netflix for doing it. I'm like, I'm not defending Netflix. I'm just talking about reality. Netflix is gonna win this. They're gonna be fine. And constantly, every time Netflix does something where they like raise a price or do something else, or they cancel some shows, people freak out and go, this is the end of Netflix. This is the end of Netflix. And then they continue to grow. It's like, why? Because they're offering shit to everybody. It's like, people are like, oh, Netflix doesn't have nearly enough good shows. It's like, like, honestly, I think the biggest problem Netflix has isn't the amount of stuff they have coming out. I think they have plenty of stuff coming out. It's that they do a pretty good job of showing you what's out.
Yeah, they do.
That's why I also say Netflix is also at a better place than everybody else when it comes to the strike, because I think Netflix could just straight up repackage stuff that they've already had on there that people had no idea is on Netflix.
Oh yeah, they
There's
totally could.
so much stuff that's come to Netflix that just completely went under people's radars. Because Netflix they have too much coming out. When they have like 5 or 6 new shows a week coming out, and like the entire show coming out when it comes out, versus like Disney Plus releasing 1 episode at a time, there's so much content that just flies right over and under everybody's heads. Like they just don't see it coming. They don't see it, and they only pay attention to like, oh, there's a new season of Stranger Things, or oh, Wednesday had that big dance thing on TikTok. I guess I'll pay attention to that. But there's so many other things that they just completely miss that Netflix could just go, hey, everybody else has nothing, but have you seen these 15 shows on Netflix that are marketed exactly to your demographic? It's like nobody else can do that, I think, besides Netflix. They're like the only people that have the amount of content to do that. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of my position on the state of the streaming services and stuff, is that Netflix is the market leader for a reason. They're by far the market leader, and they can make these moves that we don't necessarily like, and it might not hurt them. But the other companies, they need to get their heads a little bit more into the game to realize where they are at. They need to be a bit more self-reflective of who they are and what they offer, because they're not in the same place as Netflix. And in order to get there, they're going to have to spend a lot more money. They're going to have to actually do a good job of getting content out there for people. And then maybe they would be a true competitor to where Netflix is, being able to do something like that. But right now they can't. And the fact that so many of them are trying to price match and everything while offering very little is kind of bad. You and I talked about before we started recording the podcast that there's an issue of like, I talked about as like a pendulum swinging. And it goes back to when, cable was even a new thing, that like you have a period where everybody's kind of trying to differentiate and spread out, which is where we are right now with streaming services. And then the pendulum swings in the opposite direction. And that's all about conjoining and shrinking stuff down. And to give an example of that would be like cable bundles, when everything was about cable bundles. And it wasn't even just like, oh, you can get all of these channels and all this stuff and all this stuff packed in. And hey, there might be like 100 channels you don't give a shit about, but there's all this other stuff you want too. And we'll give you discounts because you also get your internet through us and your home phone through us, And so everything was about condensing and shrinking down and bundling. And now everything's about like, we have a new streamer. Now we have our own streamer. Now we're doing our own thing, and we're trying to all raise our prices individually, independently of each other, and become these bigger competitors to your time. But we're very quickly approaching that opposite swing of the pendulum, where you're going to start seeing some of these streamers go out of business, some of them merging with other people, some of them taking content libraries from other companies by either buying them or merging with those companies. And then you're also going to see stuff, which we're already starting to see, where like if you're on Amazon, for example, you can subscribe to HBO through your Amazon account. And that allows you not only to kind of have all your content in one place, but to also be able to like cancel and restart those subscriptions very easily, where you can go like, okay, I want HBO Max for a couple months now. And then after that, go, you know what? I don't need it right now. I can come back to it a few months later, which, as you brought up, isn't necessarily good for that individual streaming platform, being HBO in this example, but it's how it makes sense for us to bundle and pare things down so that not only just so that it's cheaper, but just so it's less confusing. I mean, cable, you had your cable box. You went there and you had all your channels in one place. But with streaming services, you have like separate apps. Sometimes, you can use this app on your Roku TV, but for this other app, it doesn't work well in that. So you have to use your Chromecast for that. Or like this one app is best if you're using it through your Xbox Series X versus through just your Roku TV. And there's like all this confusion about that. Makes it hard to watch stuff, makes it hard to keep track of what you're watching. So I think we're rapidly heading towards that conflation period where everything shrinks down again.
For sure.
But that's it for our news segment. And now we're going to move on to our final segment, full spoilers. This week for full spoilers, we're talking about Barbarian, which was written and directed by Zach Krieger, who was the director for The Whitest Kids You Know, which was like a comedy sketch show. I believe it was on IFC or something, or Sundance.
It was on the IFC, yeah.
Yeah. So people have often said that like comedy and horror kind of are similar in the sense that they're very much based on like pacing and how you play with pacing and expectations. And so a lot of times you can get like a crossover between those two. A good example of that would be Jordan Peele and his success that he's had in horror now as a filmmaker compared to his background as like a sketch comedy actor.
Yeah.
But here is like, it's another example. You have a comedy director who's now directing a horror movie.
Yeah. It's like a crossover. A lot of crossover between comedy and horror recently, huh?
Yeah, definitely.
What
do you think?
They use similar tool sets, so that's why it works. Yeah.
So what did you think of this movie? I told you to go in.
I thought it was
as little as possible.
I thought it was hilariously fucked up. It was fucked up. And the reason it works is because, it works if you don't know what's going to happen. Because a lot of what makes it work is actually the slow burn.
Yeah.
The first,
that's the way it reveals stuff to you.
The first, 40 minutes or something, it's not much happens. It's all the tension and something has to happen in this movie, right? Because to get into it, it starts off with this woman. She rented, this Airbnb in Detroit, and she gets there and she finds out that somebody else is already renting it. It sets the tone initially because this could easily be a comedy setup, but they set the tone even though nothing's happening and there's no suggestion of what genre movie this is from the setup alone. The suggestion is already planted by the musical choices in the scenes as well as the way the main character's acting, the way she's so apprehensive about everything, and also the kind of fact that
the editing and the camera work and everything,
and also the way Bill Skarsgård does look kind of weird. He does. So all of that is suggestive of the type of movie that we're actually watching, even without it being explicitly told you. Obviously, going into it, I'm biased because I know it's supposed to be a horror movie. So I don't know if I can say that you would pick up on it, but I think you should be able to pick up on it just because the atmosphere that they're creating.
The music and the editing and the camera work. I think all that stuff plays into that this is horror, that there's some kind of suspense going on.
So you spend most of the first half of the movie just waiting for the shoe to drop, right? And a lot of it's centered around Bill Skarsgård. You're okay, what's this dude's deal? What's he all about? What's going to happen with this? And like I said, it's so good that you don't know anything going into this because it takes a complete left turn, halfway through the movie and then never stops from there.
Yeah, I think what this movie really succeeds at is it's the way it reveals stuff to you.
Yes.
When the movie first starts, it's very dark, but what you need to see is very illuminated. So she'll be in her car and her cabin lights in her car are on. So you can see her in great detail. You can see exactly who she is. You can see her expressions. You can tell what her place is basically in this. But everything outside of that exact conditions of the inside of her car is completely dark. You can't see anything. She walks up to the house. You see, oh, this is a really cute little house. But it's the only thing that's lit. You can't see anything.
Yeah, you can't see the rest of the neighborhood. You can't see how the neighborhood's completely freaking bombed out.
Yeah, you can't see anything about it. So you just see, oh, there's this charming house and everything else is in darkness. She goes in, when she gets led into the house by Bill Skarsgård's character, when he lets her into the house and she walks inside, it follows her from the outside and cuts to darkness. And that's how we get the title card for the movie, which is just kind of a brilliant cut as well. And then when they're in the house, the two of them together, it's very much okay, it's like you said, it's something up with the sky.
Yeah. And again, because you're introduced to Tess from the beginning, right? Mm-hmm. That's the first character. You're already invested in her. This is our protagonist. And so when she approaches Keith with apprehension, she's apprehensive from the jump and she doesn't even want to go in there. She gets goaded into going in there, but she is very standoffish.
She's on guard.
Yes.
And that even comes up in the dialogue.
You, the viewer, that puts you on guard.
Yeah.
You're on guard about this guy now. You're kind of oh yeah, what's this guy's deal? Is he telling the truth? what sinister stuff is he up to?
It comes through in the dialogue too, which is interesting because she directly talks to him about the fact that this is something that's very dangerous for a woman, or that a woman considers very dangerous.
Yeah.
That a man in the same situation might just go like, oh yeah, I'll just walk right in. I'll just do this and not have a second thought. And then he also gives voice to the weirdness of the situation that he's providing.
Yes.
Like, he's like, I noticed you didn't drink the tea I got you. He's like, I understand. I perfectly understand. But it's like, just by bringing that up, it makes the moment creepy.
Yeah.
Even though he's being genuine.
Yeah. It's really brilliant because they're syncing up your emotions with the emotions of the protagonist. So, like, you're really empathizing with the protagonist in this. And again, a lot of that has to do with the fact that you as a viewer know as much as she does about the situation.
Yeah.
Right? You're not given any more information than the protagonist at that point has.
And that's what, like I said, like when you first see her in the car, you only see her. Like, everything else is in darkness. That's what this movie's all about, I think, is it's about the way information is revealed to you.
Yes.
So, like, she goes to the bathroom and she sees his electric toothbrush, and these are the things that start to normalize him, in her opinion, that make her feel a little bit more at ease.
Yeah, she doesn't see anything weird or out of place, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
he's like, would some psychopath have an electric toothbrush? It's like, well, of course they'd still have that, but I mean, it's like,
yeah,
it's those things that humanizes him. It's those little bits of information.
Right. Yeah, she doesn't find handcuffs and saran wrap or something, you know, like, you know, she sees that, you know, and yeah, that does normalize him because you're fully expecting to get the shot where she looks and she sees his kill suit or some shit, you know,
yeah.
like,
why does he have a big box full of latex gloves or something, you know?
Right, yeah.
We don't get that. Instead we get the little bits of information that humanize him, and then they actually have a conversation in the night, and that humanizes them further because she brings up why she's there. She's for like an interview that she's going to work with a documentarian, and then he's like, oh, you know, what work has she done? And she says, well, she did this movie, but like nobody's seen it. And she starts to describe it, and he's like, oh, I've seen that.
They start.
And she's like, what? There's no way you've seen it. And he starts describing the movie, and she's like, oh, okay.
And then like, you're still suspicious. You're like, okay, like did he do an op on her?
Yeah, like what's going on? Like where's this movie going? What's going to be
where's this movie going? And the thing is, like, she starts to let her guard down. She starts developing a relationship with this guy to the point she even finds herself infatuated with him. And you're wondering, where is this going? And I'm like, okay, if this dude's not a bad guy, who is the bad guy? Like, what is the deal? And
the first kind of hint that it might be something else is that her bedroom door is open when she had closed it. And she goes out and he's having like a night terror dream or something. And she's like, okay, this guy is asleep. Like, what is something else going, like, what's going on? And so she's a little bit unsettled by that. And then she comes off as weird to him. It's kind of like the reverse thing, you know? It's like maybe she's fucked up and she's some kind of like monster. And I don't mean like literally a monster, but she's some kind of killer or something. And this guy is the guy that's going to be her victim. Maybe they're setting us up for the reverse. Maybe something's going on like that. But that kind of all resolves. She wakes up. Everything's fine in the morning. There's a note from him. He says he's out. One of the things that I thought was really interesting was the first shot of the outside at daytime.
Yes.
Where she goes outside the house and she's going through. She puts the key away and
stuff. Yeah.
And then the camera turns around and you see the neighborhood and you're like, holy shit.
Yeah, it's a disaster area.
Yeah.
That's like the only decent looking house in the entire neighborhood. It's crazy. Oh, yeah.
She gets chased back into the house by like some homeless guy that's screaming at her.
Yes.
And she's freaked out and she's calling the police and they're like, ma'am, we don't have anybody to send out. Stop complaining.
The police are worthless in this, which is real.
Well, it's also even more so because of the setting, because it's Detroit, you know, and because of what's going on in Detroit right now. It's like, that's why I mentioned when we were talking about Justified last week or City Primeval, that Detroit's like right now, modern Detroit is like kind of a fascinating setting because of what's going on. And I was kind of hinting at this, that we hadn't watched yet. But yeah, you talk about she finds the dungeon. How does she find the dungeon?
Well, she gets herself locked in the basement. She does the thing that makes me nervous. Like, she gets locked, the door locks behind her and she gets stuck in the basement. And while she's there, kind of like twiddling her thumbs, waiting for Keith to return, she notices like this rope sticking out of the wall and she pulls it and there's a secret door. And at first, like, again, they wrote her to be like very smart She's not your typical stupid horror movie protagonist.
She just looks down the hallway and says, nope.
Yeah, she just says nope, but then curiosity gets the better of her and she goes in there anyway. And then she finds this weird room with a dirty bed and a video camera and a bucket and like a bloody handprint on the wall. And she freaks out, naturally, obviously.
Yeah.
She has a perfectly normal response. Keith returns. She has Keith free her from the basement.
Well, Keith can't get into the house because he doesn't have the key. She
gives him the key. That's a minor detail. I mean, Keith lets her out. That's the important detail. And she tells him about what she saw. He goes down there. He doesn't return and he doesn't answer her back. So even though she doesn't want to go back down there, she's forced to go back down there. And he's calling for help. And it's this whole crazy thing. And this is when it's like building and building now. Like we're getting to, because this is when it's getting like insane. And then like what happens is the most insane, like out of left field thing. Because like, she finds Keith and he says somebody bit him. And she's trying to get him to go with her out of there. And he's like, no, we can't go that way. And then this thing just comes barreling down and like crushes Keith's head against the wall. Yeah. And then it cuts from there.
Yeah. It's a very jarring cut. Because it cuts to like Los Angeles County or like, somebody driving along the Pacific Coast Highway, singing along to some happy music in his convertible. It's Justin Long.
Yes.
And you're like, what the fuck?
our second protagonist for this film.
Yes.
By the way. And really, it's about this fucked up story about like, this dude who made a monster through inbreeding. And they've been, like, kidnapping and torturing and killing people.
Well, it's not even necessarily implied that. It's like one guy was kidnapping girls to rape them and then have them have children or rape the children. And then the monster isn't even really trying to, like, torture and kill people.
It wants a child.
It just wants a child, but it's all inbred and super strong like a monster and just not, not intelligent at all. And so it's like an ape that's just, doesn't know its own strength and is just killing things by accident and stuff.
Right. Well, very intentionally in the case of like, because
when it gets startled.
When it gets startled or when you piss it off, it will kill you. Brutally.
But it's not like, it's not out there to kill. It's out there, it's just confused and unintelligent.
Right, yeah. I will say, one issue I had with this, and it's not even like a major issue. It doesn't like really affect the movie, but like it affects it ever so slightly to where like it just takes the impact or the air out of like one of the key moments of the film, is the fact that when they introduced Justin Long's character, AJ?
Yes.
When they introduced AJ into the film halfway through, he is immediately introduced as a rapist.
He's introduced as somebody going through a Me Too scandal. We see the very beginning.
He's
Me Too scandal.
Right. Yeah, he's introduced as a rapist because there's no way they were going to write it to where like he was being accused of rape and wasn't, because then obviously there would have been firestorms about that on Twitter. No, there was no way they were going to write, and they have him confirm that he raped this woman in a scene where he's like in Detroit and he's like at a bar with an old friend. And he basically like, he doesn't come out and say it, but he basically confirms like, like he browbeat this woman into having sex with him.
He's like, I'm a very persuasive person or something. His friend's like, what does that mean? And he's like, did she say no? And he said, well, at first, And so basically, I think that's why I don't necessarily agree with saying that they introduced him as a rapist. They introduced him as somebody going through a Me Too scandal.
Yeah, but
we know that that there's no way they're not going to address it that way, of course, but that's not how he's introduced as somebody going through a Me Too scandal. And like he gets a phone call, he's like an actor, and he gets a phone call, he's like being removed from a project, and it doesn't change my point at all. So going to my point, so we have him confirm it in the scene. So we know like this dude is not like really on the up and up. He's a sleazy person. He thinks he's a good person, or he thinks he's doing, but he's a sleazy person. So like that's made pitch clear. And the reason I say like I wish they didn't do that was because of the key scene at the end when they're running up to the top of like, I think it's like a water tower, some structure. They're running up, they're getting to the top of it, and he pushes Tess off of it to goad the creature into chasing after her and falling with her.
essentially like killing them both. He doesn't care if she dies as long as the creature also dies and he gets to survive. And I think like that would be a more shocking betrayal if like we didn't have such a crystal clear idea of like his moral character. If they left it a little ambiguous, like, oh, we don't know like too much about, like what this character is going to do when his back is against the wall. Is he going to do the right thing? And they made it like very clear from the jump that he's not the sort of guy that's going to take the righteous path. Like he is going to, at the end of the day, be a scumbag and save himself. And I think knowing that ahead of time takes a little bit of air out of that scene. It still has an impact. It's still like kind of shocking, but man, like it's just that a little bit deflated because of that.
See, where I would push back on you on this, and the whole point of what I was bringing up about how he wasn't initially presented that, even if as an audience we know to expect that that's going to be the case, that
right.
Just using our brains to go, they wouldn't do that for the film and stuff. Even with that thing, they don't present it immediately that he's a rapist. And when they do that kind of thing in that reveal, it's like, oh, you still kind of don't know the way his brain works. And I think what's interesting about that and the way they did that, and if they hadn't had done that, it would have hurt the movie, is that the way they're presenting the psychology of the character is that he doesn't think what he's doing is wrong.
No.
Like he thought, when he says I was a little bit forceful, but she was into it and it was fine, it wasn't rape. That's not him lying. That's him, if he's lying, it's to himself.
Right.
It's not him lying knowing that he did something really bad and accepting it but then like denying it to somebody else. That's not what was happening. What was happening is he was in denial about his own criminality. And that comes up again when he finds the rapist guy in the basement. Because he finds the videotape and he plays it and he looks at the guy and he's like, how could you do this? Like what the fuck's wrong with you? And he doesn't see the parallel, at all. Like he doesn't see that he's a monster too.
Yeah, because to him, like, he got the woman to say yes. So that was consensual sex, even if he had to like force her into it. Even though like he might not have beat her or abused her or anything to get to that point, the fact that she initially said no and that he just kept pushing the subject until she gave in, he doesn't equate that to rape, but it is rape.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, I think that issue and that element of his character is too important to the movie to put that aside to make a moment more shocking. Like, I think that's too important. And the way it comes up at multiple places, like when they're with the one homeless guy and he's telling them the story about what, who this lady is and why she's down there and what's up with her and why she's like that and everything. When he's telling her that story, there's a part where Justin Long's character is like, I need to make up for this because am I a bad person or am I a good person that did a bad thing?
Right.
And it's all framed in the context of the fact that he accidentally shot the main character when they were trying to escape because he didn't know it was
he's
her.
Also referring to...
Exactly. He's referring to what he actually did. He's having a moment of clarity and realizing that he did something wrong. And then you see him immediately talk himself out of that opinion.
Yeah.
He's like, am I a bad person? I did a bad thing. And then he says, no, but I could be a good person who just happened to do a bad thing. But, was what I did. And then he slowly and the people he's with don't realize, they don't know his backstory. So they don't know what he's talking about. They think he's talking about this situation, but it's really showing the fact that he's able to convince himself that he didn't do something bad. And then it happens again when he figures out that he's going to push her off the water tower, the scene you're talking about, where he does this exact same thing. He makes an excuse for why he has to do it.
Yeah.
And then when he comes back down and finds that the one girl is still alive, he does it again.
Yeah, he does it again. He's like, oh yeah, you know why I had to do that, right? I had no choice, making all these excuses.
And then he gets Oberyn.
Yeah, then he gets Oberyn. I mean, obviously, the character had to experience karma at the end of it. I would hate this movie if he walked out alive and Tess died. I would actively hate this movie. I would be like, wow, that was shit. Yeah, he had to go. That was satisfying. There was another part in the movie where I was like, oh, come on. Thankfully, it didn't end the way I thought it was going. It was another part where Tess is going back to save him because Tess is an actual good person. Tess is actually has a conscience and doesn't have to convince herself she's a good person. Unlike AJ, right? She's going back to save him and he's escaping through the tunnels and he's got the gun and I'm just like, oh man, if he fucking shoots her, I'm over this movie. And then he shoots her her, and I'm like, oh, come on! Because I thought she was gonna die there. I thought, like, he was gonna shoot her, and she was gonna die, and that was gonna be, like, the ironic. I was like, oh, come on! Why'd you do that movie? She survives it, thankfully. But, like, that's the point where I'm like, oh, okay, it looks like she's not gonna die. I can forgive you, movie.
I still say, though, like, as I was saying before, what this movie does really well is it's the way information is revealed. And there's, like, there's two big turning point things where that happens in the movie. Besides, like, not talking about, like, seeing the outside of the house and stuff, which was kind of a crazy moment as well, the way it was put together. But we talked about the jarring transition to Justin Long in a car on the Pacific Coast Highway finding out he's being Me Too'd.
Yes.
Like, we talked about that one, but there's another one where you find out it cuts back to, like, the 1970s, I think, and you see this guy, this rapist guy we referred to, who's
I think it was like the 80s. It was
because they did talk about Reagan.
Yeah, they were talking about the Reagan administration.
They talked about Reagan taking over. It would have been the very beginning of the Reagan administration when he took over for Carter, because they were talking about him inheriting an economy or something.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So they very, very firmly like set this in the early 80s. So this is like the origins of like what's going on. This is like, this segment is like an explanation, the weird crap that's happening in the present, because it otherwise doesn't have anything to do with anything.
Mm-hmm.
And also it's like a setup for what AJ discovers later after like this scene.
Yeah, where it's this rapist, he abducts women, he takes them down into his basement, he rapes them, he forces them to have his children.
He films it.
Yeah, he films it, he puts them in cages, because we don't see him put them in cages, but we see the cages.
We saw the cages, yeah. So we know he was keeping them in cages.
I think this movie does a good job of like being dark, being pretty scary, and then also having some like genuine comedy in it. Sometimes it's really dark, sometimes it's funny in different ways, but like a good example is when Justin Long's character discovers the hidden rooms in the basement, and he's like, what the fuck? And then immediately starts Googling, and does underground storage count as like Squarespace on a place?
Well,
he's going through the dark, dreary basement with a tape ruler, through the rape room with a tape ruler.
It's funny because, like, I think, like, Georgina Campbell and Bill Skarsgård are more dramatic actors, but Justin Long has definitely, like, been in a lot of comedies before, so he's, like, the comedic actor in this.
Yeah.
And so, like, he knows, like, how to sell those reactions in a more comedic way, where, like, Tessa's reactions are more dramatic.
Yeah, it's like, she sees that room and it's like horror. He sees it, he doesn't even take in the fact that there's bloody handprints on the wall. He doesn't put two and two together.
No.
Of what's happening. He just goes through the room with the tape ruler, like around the fucking gross bed.
He sits on the bed and just says, oh, gross.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't even, like, notice. It doesn't even clue him in, like, oh, why is there this video recorder pointed at this old gross bed in a hidden room?
He goes by the cages and he says, what the fuck is this? And then he starts going down the side and counting for this, like, still using a tape measure. When he says, what the fuck is this? He's not talking about the fact that there's cages in this dark area. He's talking about, like, oh, there's even more room.
Right, yeah. Well, he's saying, like, what the fuck, like, he's noticing shit, but, like, it's not
He's not putting two and two together, though.
It's not, like, hitting the way it's supposed to with this guy.
I think that plays back to what Tess was saying earlier in the movie that we brought up about men versus women, and like women being in a situation and having to go, oh, if I open up this door, if I go into this house, am I going to be raped? Am I going to be attacked? And how men don't feel that they just they'll just wander right in or something. I think it's kind of playing on that idea. I think that's kind of what they're doing intentionally.
AJ is also just completely oblivious. Like that. He's not presented as being that bright.
Yeah. He's all like cheery and stuff and about like, oh, let's get this done. How can I fix this situation? He's just not, he doesn't have depth to him at all.
Right. Right. Yeah, exactly. He's the complete opposite of Tess, really.
But they even played that up with Bill Skarsgård's character, because like when he went into the basement to check it out, she mentioned there's a room with a dirty bed, a camera facing it, and a bloody handprint on the wall. And he's like, well, I have to go check it out myself. And, I think that also plays into the idea of what she was saying.
I think his reaction was more like an incredulous, he was definitely like disbelieving her to an extent,
Yeah,
right? Or
yeah.
kind of like in his mind thinking, oh, she saw something that spooked her and she's like overreacting. Like that was his reaction.
But I think that plays into exactly what she was saying. Like
Yeah.
women come across a dangerous situation and it's more dangerous to them than it is to men, usually.
Right.
And so they're very on guard about what's happening there. Whereas a man just will like walk right in or something like that, you know, and check it out. And I think it plays into that like part of the reason why men don't have those things is that they see that this stuff can happen to women, but they don't even consider it. Like a woman will go like, oh, that's too scary. And the man goes like, it's not scary. I'm a big tough man. That's not a big deal,
Yeah.
you know? And I think that's kind of what she was getting at. And it plays into that with both, especially with AJ's character, but also with Bill's character.
We don't get to see Bill Skarsgård's like actual reaction to what's down there because he goes down there, leaves our frame of reference, and then next time we see him, he's already deep in the shit.
Yeah,
so,
he's already been bitten and about to be killed, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's, I think this movie it's one of the best movies to use an example of, like, go into it without knowing anything.
Oh, yeah.
Because it surprises you. It has so many surprises and turns that are really interesting.
Because I think, like, if you know the premise, if you know, like, it's about this inbred, like, woman monster killing people in this house. If you know that going in, like, the whole first 40 or so, like, almost like an hour of the film is not going to hit the way it's supposed to hit. It's going to be like, you're just going to be bored waiting for the monster to show up.
Or if you know too much about, like, AJ's character before going into the movie. Like, if they had a bunch of scenes of him in the trailer. Which, ironically, they did cut a trailer to make it look like it was a comedy.
Yeah.
Starring Justin Long. They did a second trailer.
It's funny because, like, I thought Justin Long was, like, one of the main characters he is, but, like, I wasn't expecting him to show up halfway through the film.
Yeah.
So I was kind of like, okay, how does Justin Long figure into this?
I still love that. I love how jarring that transition was when they cut to him. That was so good. I think this was a really good movie. I think like I said, it was really surprising. It's a perfect example of a movie to go in without knowing anything. And it's also, I don't know. I think it really establishes how interesting Detroit is as a modern setting for like movies or shows, you know? Right now, like what's happening in Detroit and stuff, and just kind of how weird it is and how fucked up it is. I mean, I heard years ago about there was a building, a skyscraper in Detroit, and it sold for $2 million.
Damn.
That's a skyscraper.
Yeah, that's
crazy.
That's
how fucked up Detroit is, you know? That like a skyscraper sold for $2 million. Like a fucking condo here can sell for $2 million, you know? It's like the difference is insane. But,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I'm glad you were able to watch it, and I'm glad you didn't have too much spoiled for you before you got to see it, because I think that's part of the excitement.
Avoided spoilers, you know, like, so yeah.
So that is it for Barbarian. Thank you everybody for listening. Next week, we're going to be talking about John Wick Episode 3 and Violent Night, the Santa Claus-esque John Wick movie, because we're going back to the Baba Yaga effect. We're doing Baba Yaga Effect Part 3. John Wick 3 and Violent Night are the two movies that we're going to be discussing. So thank you everybody for listening. You can reach me on Twitter. I'm at Tyson Gifford. Will is at VoxelHero. You can check out our website, thetotalscreen.com. You can check out our YouTube channel, our SoundCloud page, all that stuff. If you go to our website and click on a container story for any of our podcast episodes, in the last paragraph, you'll see all the relevant links to our SoundCloud page, our RSS feed, all that stuff if you need it. It's all there. So until next week, night.
Night.
Thank you for listening to the OnScreen podcast, the official podcast of The Total Screen. Visit our website at thetotalscreen.com. This podcast can be found on any major podcast client, including Pocket Cast and Apple Podcast. The entire backlog of this podcast and other content can be found on our YouTube channel.